Good evening, everybody. Mary said I wanted to speak about my experience. I'm not sure that's quite right. How it came about, just for information, I did an article for the Police Federation. The police, I think, is renowned for being a culture where you don't talk about sensitive issues like prostate cancer, mental health, all that sort of stuff. So I saw it as an opportunity to promote prostate cancer. And I'll explain to you as I talk from my story why I felt that was important. So I did an article for the Police Federation about my experience. Within about a week of that article, I had a phone call off a couple of friends who made comments like, I can't believe I opened the evening news, the Worcester News, and see your ugly mug in the evening news. Somehow Worcester News had got hold of my story and they put it in the newspaper, which, to be honest, I was a little bit frustrated about because no one had asked me for permission, and there I was all across Worcester in the evening news about something I thought I didn't want to talk too openly about it. But the reverse of that was, it was an opportunity to spread the word about prostate cancer, so I tried to look at it as a positive. I then got contact from Peter, who asked me to do the article for yourselves, which again I agreed to, and then Mary. Mary got hold of me and said, will I come and speak to you as a group? And to be honest with you, initially, I sort of wondered why you'd want to listen to someone like me, just a normal person that's been through the experience of prostate cancer. But Mary sort of said to me, because I'm happy to talk about my experience, that could be a benefit to somebody. And I think my view is, well, if it helps one person in the room today understand perhaps some of the issues that I went through, then it's worth doing. So here I am. So just a little bit about me. I was born in 1964, makes me 59. I was 59 on Wednesday the 12th of this month. Born in Hereford. Please don't hold that against me. I only lived there for a couple of years, and I moved to Worcester with my parents, where I've pretty much grown up. I've pretty much born and bred in Worcester, really. Most of my years have been in Worcester. My parents still alive. I'm very lucky. My dad is 84. My mum is 80. They've both experienced cancer. So I've had it from the perspective of being a son, with my parents having it. Thankfully, both still alive. They're still fighting the experience that they've had. So I've had some experience of that, but it never quite prepares you for when you get told those words. Met my wife, Louise. I was 18. We got married at 23, and we've been together for 45 years, is it? Something like that. It's a long time. She deserves a medal, I think, for putting up for me. It's a long time, and I'm pleased to say we've had our ups and downs, but we're still together. And again, she's been there for me through all this process. We're very lucky. We've got a close family, which I think is important, especially for something like this. We had 4 children ourselves. They're all grown up now, aged between 26 and 35. I think I got the ages right. And they all live in and around Worcester, which I think is really nice. We see them probably most weeks, which is good sometimes, not so good other times. As you get old, you want a bit of peace and quiet. But we've also got 6 grandchildren, which is, again, on the one hand, is absolutely fantastic. We're very, very lucky. We see them all most weeks. Louise gave up work when I retired to help out with the grandchildren, which I think is really nice, and she loves having them. But it's hard work. Our eldest granddaughter is 12. We've got one that I think is 5. I'm going to try and remember the ages. 4, 4, 2 and 1. So 5 of them are very young, full of energy, very demanding. And there are times where at the end of the day we are both exhausted. But it's lovely to have a close family around us, and I think that's really important. So I've been lucky with having a close family. A little bit about my career. So I joined West Mercia Police in October 1991. I was 27. I didn't go straight into the police. I remember going to a careers evening in school one evening, and someone there from the police said to me, our advice is go outside, get a job, have some experience of life before you come into the police. And I think that was really good advice. That's what I did. I joined the police. I started working at Worcester Police Station, again, where I've spent most of my career there. And you might think it's quite difficult to work where you live. And in some respects, it was to a degree at times, because Worcester's quite a big city, but it's not that big. And there'd be occasions where I'd come across people that I knew, But I always had the sort of the mindset in the police that if I treated people fairly, how I expected to be treated, people would hopefully respect me for that. And in general, that's how it worked out. I was very lucky in my career. I did a variety of roles, working in local policing, custody, response policing for a number of years. But the majority of my career was spent as a detective in a variety of roles, working in CID and public protection, dealing with some of the worst things you can imagine, really. Some, murders, child abuse, all sorts of really horrible things, which isn't easy to deal with. But I really enjoyed my career. Very challenging at times. You go through a lot of difficult things, but I did really enjoy it. I was very lucky. I got promoted to the rank of superintendent. Some of my friends wonder how on earth that happened and still can't believe it to this day, and to be honest, nor can I. But I did get superintendent. I've worked in Worcester, I've worked in Kidderminster, here as the chief inspector, Telford, Hereford, and I was at headquarters throughout my career. But my last 3 years, I was very lucky. I was asked to set up a new national intelligence team for the national lead around acquisitive crime. That's the things like burglary, car crime, which sadly the police don't focus on as much now as they used to because of the change of demands and violence, etc. That involved me having some trips across to Netherlands, Ireland, Romania. So my last 3 years I really enjoyed. But as I came to retire, which was around, I was due to retire October 2021, was when this sort of process started with me and prostate cancer. And I get a little bit frustrated really, because in the police my sickness record in general was pretty good. But my last 6 months of my career was spent on the sick, because I just wasn't in the right place to deal with work and deal with the issues that I was facing around prostate cancer. Probably hit me harder than I expected, if I'm really honest. Going through all the various bits you have to go through. Have you got it? Have you not got it? And I just felt in the end, I made a decision I needed to retire, go sick for the last 6 months, which I do regret, but it is what it is, and I have to just accept that that's what I needed to do. And looking back, it was the right thing for me. I needed to do that at the time to help me deal with everything else that was going on. So my diagnosis came in July 2021. Within the police, I had a colleague, a friend, who had been diagnosed with prostate cancer about 4 years before 2021. And in work, he was very openly talked about his experiences, the challenges, and the main reason he did that, and I will be eternally grateful for what he did, was he kept saying to people around that age of 50, get checked, get checked. I was a similar age to him. Like a typical bloke, I put it off, I'm okay, I've got no symptoms, I'm fine. And I had no symptoms that I noticed, nothing that I'd noticed, nothing that I realised. Probably then 2 or 3 years later, I bumped into him again. Straight away he's there. Have you got checked? Have you got checked? No, I haven't. Get checked, get checked. And I promised him I'd go and get checked. And I did. I went and got checked. I had a PSA test. And I know some people disregard a PSA test, but for me, I had a PSA test. And my first reading was 3.6. So still low, but slightly raised for my age. Saw a doctor. Doctor wasn't concerned and said to come back in 6 months' time just to put my mind at rest and have another test. So I went back in probably 6 to 8 months, had a second test, and it had gone up to 4.8. So still low, but it had gone up. It had gone higher. I had the examination and was told that my prostate was smooth but slightly enlarged, which is a positive thing that it was smooth. And at that point, I should have been referred, having spoke to the consultant, but the doctor again said to me, come back in 6 months and we'll check it again. So I went back in 6 months' time. I have to say it was down to me to go back. I wasn't being pursued by a doctor or anybody. It's very much down to you to go and do these things. And again, it's very easy to put things off. So I went back and had my third PSA test, and it had come down slightly to 4.6. This time I saw a different doctor, and this doctor had a different view. His view was, because my levels were fluctuating slightly, he wanted to refer me to a consultant, to get checked out, and as he put it, to be on the safe side really around my situation and just play it safe. So I wasn't too worried, a little bit worried, but not too worried. And we sort of spoke about it and just hoped it was going to be a precautionary measure. I had an appointment to go and see the consultant within about 4 to 6 weeks, which, to be honest, surprised me. I was surprised it came through so quickly. We were in the middle of COVID at this time, but I had my appointment and I went and saw, I think it was a clinical nurse that I saw. Her name was Lisa at Worcester. I'm sure many of you will probably know Lisa or have come across Lisa at different times. She was lovely, really nice. She examined me and suggested that I had an MRI scan, just again to play it safe. So again, I have to be fair to the NHS. Again, within about 4 weeks, I had an appointment for an MRI scan. On the one hand, I was very pleased to have it so quickly, but also there's a part of me that was a bit worried because I didn't expect to get it within 4 to 6 weeks, but I had this scan. The scan was fine, had that scan, and then I had the results and I was told I had an area of interest, which could be any number of things. But of course, you start to think the worst in your head as to what it could now be. So she advised me to have a biopsy, which again, I'd go along with that advice. And again, that came through, I have to say, very quickly within 4 to 6 weeks. I think I was in Kidderminster having a biopsy. Not a nice experience. I'm sure many of you have been through it. It's not very pleasant. You lay on the bed expecting or waiting for this biopsy to take place, and I had a nurse, I can remember now, she's there, lovely nurse, talking about football, asking what team I supported. And I was worried if I told her the wrong team, I might have a bit of a difficult time on the bed. But she was really nice, and they took the samples from me. It wasn't a nice experience, but again, it was something that you had to just go through. And we came away. Again, my wife was with me throughout all that process. She took me there and brought me back. And then it's the wait, isn't it? You've got to wait for the results, which is horrible. We were due to go on holiday in July, and I was still waiting. We needed to know before our holiday. I wanted to know before I went away on holiday as to what the situation was. So I phoned up, and again I spoke to Lisa. She was very accommodating, to be fair. I explained my situation and how I felt. There were no consultants available, but what she'd said to me was, if we could get there the next day, she'd work on in the afternoon and see us. We had a bit of a conversation on the phone. Obviously, she couldn't give me one of the results on the phone, but probably from my years of experience as a police officer, knowing if someone's telling you the truth or not telling you the truth, I could sort of sense from her that it wasn't going to be good news. So Louise and I went the next day. We saw Lisa in the office. And in some respects, I'm glad she did it the way she did. She pretty much told me straight away, you've got prostate cancer. There was no sort of build-up to it. And I would say there's probably not an easy way to prepare somebody for that. And all I can remember is you've got prostate cancer. That was a real shock, a real bombshell. Even though I was expecting it, really knocked me for six, to be honest. And I can remember saying, we've caught it early. With this type of cancer, the success rate can be as high as 97%. That's all I remember. After that, I'll be quite frank about it, I got very upset, very emotional. That C word, the cancer word, is a horrible word. No one likes to hear it. Thankfully, Louise was with me, and she took on board a lot of what was being said, but I don't remember a lot about that appointment, to be honest with you. Afterwards, we talked through it, and from the samples I had 16 samples taken from me. Only 4 were cancerous, but some of them were classed as being like a lower level, and I think at least 1 or 2 were intermediate level. And I remember them saying that a couple of the samples were on the edge of my prostate, which obviously caused me some concern. Then I come back we had a holiday, went away on a holiday, which wasn't easy, going away thinking about what we were going to go through next and what's going to happen. Before our holiday, probably had to do the hardest thing I've had to do in my life, which was tell my children. Not an easy task, as I'm sure many of you will know. Not an easy conversation. There's not an easy way to say it. And again, I think as soon as you mention the cancer word, it has a massive impact on people. Seeing their faces, seeing them upset. It's interesting, the 4 children, they all acted, or they all responded very differently. We had tears from a couple, big hugs, kisses and all that sort of stuff. And then we had 2 that were sort of strong, if you like. They were putting on a front for their dad, being strong. And almost went a little bit distant. And my one daughter, we didn't really see her for a few days. And in a way I sort of felt upset that she wasn't there for me. But afterwards when we spoke about it, she said to me, "Dad, I was so upset, I could not stop crying." It still upsets me now. Anyway, we went and saw her and we were all good, but it was a really, real difficult time telling them what my situation was. It's still raw, as I know many of you will know. So the next thing is, we've got to go and see the consultant. We've got to find out what's next. They go through all the options that I have, and long story short, they recommend that I have the radical prostatectomy, have it removed, saying I was quite young, you don't need your prostate, let's take it away, let's take it away. Okay, that's fine. We go with that. My wife's a researcher. I take the mickey out of her a lot, but she does a lot of researching. Sometimes she drives me around the bend, to be honest. On this occasion, she drove me around the bend, if I'm really honest. She was on there researching for me and for her what the options are, who should do the operation. To be quite honest with you, at this point, I felt that my treatment through the NHS had been very good and I didn't want to consider anything else other than just going through the NHS. But Louise had found a man called Mr. Doherty in Birmingham Prostate Clinic who was renowned for trying to save the nerve endings, hopefully which enables you to get an erection afterwards and hopefully not be incontinent. At that point, if I'm really honest, Louise and I were in different places. Louise was looking at the operation and planning where we were going to go. I wasn't. I was just trying to get to the next hurdle. I couldn't think 2 or 3 hurdles ahead. I just faced the next hurdle. And it caused us a little bit of conflict, I suppose, because I wasn't ready to hear that sort of conversation. But I think what's important, and it's lovely here today to see so many ladies here, so many partners here, because my experience is we were at different parts of the journey, we were in different places, and there's nothing wrong with that because everybody reacts it differently to being told you got cancer. But at the time I did find it frustrating because I felt Louise was going off ahead of me. But looking back, I can see that we're just different and we just reacted in different ways to that situation. So I then get told that my operation, I was told I have to see a consultant for my operation and I should get the appointment within 2 weeks. And I thought, wow, that's really good. Really impressed. I knew from when I saw the consultant, there would be at least a 6-month waiting list to have the operation. And I thought, okay, I can deal with that. Anyway, within a couple of weeks, I had no letter, no appointment. And I was getting a little bit concerned, so I phoned up the office and said, look, this is my situation. And the secretary said to me, you'll get an appointment within the next week. I thought, okay, that's fine, I can deal with that. So the appointment came through, where are we now? July, August, probably September time. And my appointment wasn't until November, December, I think it was. I was going to have to wait another 2 or 3 months just for my appointment to see the consultant about my operation. And to be quite honest with you, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait. And I know many of you, have been in my situation, and I don't know how you all felt, but I found it very difficult to deal with the fact that I had this cancer inside me, and I didn't know what it was doing. Was it spreading? Was it staying as it is? And you hear these stories about different types, different speeds. You can go years and it hasn't spread, but no one could give me that guarantee that it wasn't going to spread. And I was told that at least 2 of my cancerous areas were on the edge of my prostate. So I took the option to go privately with the NHS consultant who I was going to see through the NHS. Mr. McCarr, I think it was. I went and saw him, paid to go and see him, and I remember seeing him going through everything, telling him how I felt and all the rest of it. My hope was, if I saw him privately, I could get on the waiting list for the NHS quicker. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. He said to me, basically, I either pay for the operation privately myself and he'll get it done sooner, or I go back, I have to come back and see him as an NHS patient to go through the same process to then get referred to the NHS waiting list. And again, that point would be some time off, as we know. And I couldn't wait, to be honest with you. I was very lucky in some respects because as part of my job, by now I'd probably just about come to retire, we had a critical illness insurance policy in the police in case you got badly injured in the job that you're doing. Now, I didn't realise this, and thankfully a friend did speak to me just before I retired and said, have you put a claim in, because it's claimed as a critical illness? And I hadn't put a claim in, but I did, and I was very lucky. I had a payout quite quickly and made a decision that I was going to use that money for my operation. Now, around this time, well, before this, I suppose, I've been contacted by a number of colleagues, ex-colleagues, who had been through prostate cancer, who had, some had had the operation, some had recovered, some were going through it. And to be honest with you, it surprised me how many people I knew had prostate cancer, but I didn't know they had it, if that makes sense. It was only after I got diagnosed, people come and say to you, I've had it, I've got it, this is my experience. One of my ex-colleagues, he lives in Kidderminster, funny enough. He contacted me out the blue, to be honest with you. I hadn't expected it, out the blue, have a phone call, just saying, look, I'm really sorry to hear it, but I'd like to talk to you, tell you about my experience. And I had this from a few people, and if I'm honest, I found that invaluable, having someone to talk to, just to try and understand the process, what the issues might be. Found it really, really beneficial. This particular guy said to me very openly about issues that he had after the operation, and he mentioned a name to me. He paid privately and he went to Mr. Doherty at Birmingham Prostate Clinic. At that point, I just thought, he's given me the name, my wife's given me the name, that's the option I'm going to take. His recovery had been quite good, some issues after the operation, so I decided to go and do it privately. Now again, I'm lucky I'm in the situation I could do that. I know many people don't have that option, but I did. And it was the right thing for me. I think even if I hadn't had the insurance policy, I would have tried to find some way of raising that money to go privately, because the thought of waiting another 8 months with that cancer inside me, not knowing what it was doing, would have driven me around the bend, if I'm really honest. I had to have it. I needed to take it out. I needed it out of me. So when I saw Mr. Doherty, very nice man, explained the processes to me, was very, very nice, and very quick to tell me he had a good reputation for saving nerve endings and also around trying to stop you being incontinent, which were big factors to me, to be honest. It's funny, people say to you, surely you'd rather just have the cancer removed. Does it matter if you can't get an erection if you're incontinent? And I agree with that to a degree, but of course your best option is have it removed and still be able to do some of the things you could do before. So we went and saw him, and we arranged, or we booked in for me to have an operation in January. That January. I got COVID. Typical, isn't it? Got COVID. We had to delay it, only for a month, I'm pleased to say. And then in February, I had the operation in February. Was told it's major surgery, you're gonna need to rest afterwards. To be honest, in my own head, I just thought, well, they're just gonna open me up, take my prostate out, I'll be all right, I'll be fine. But it did knock me about big style, pain afterwards. I couldn't do very much for a couple of weeks, if I'm really honest. Tried to probably do a bit too much, but you have to give into it, rest, take it easy, give yourself a chance to recover. Found it quite frustrating at times because I couldn't do very much. Louise had to pretty much do most things. Now, Mr. Doherty had decided, he's at the forefront of all this. This is what he keeps telling me, that he's going to take my catheter out in 7 days. Now, the NHS, I think, is about 14 days. Never thought much of it, if I'm really honest. Thought he knows what he's doing. Go along with what he's suggesting. Took it out within 7 days. Again, not knowing what to expect, but it wasn't as bad as I expected when they took the catheter out, and I had to wee in a bottle and everything was fine. So off I went home. Thought, this is it, this is good. I've done the worst bit now. Hopefully now we're on the mend. My journey then got a bit complicated. I started to get pains, like very down below, deep down inside, and I wasn't sure if that was normal or not normal, bearing in mind they took away my prostate. And also, you're on strong painkillers. I got constipated, and gradually I found I was struggling to go to the toilet to have a wee. I was struggling to have a wee, and this pain was getting worse. And again, typical really, it was a weekend. Well, of a weekend, there's no one available in the private world, okay? So I phoned them up, spoke to someone in the private hospital. They said, oh, it can be normal, but the pain got worse and worse, and I couldn't have a wee. I went to my GP the next day, that morning, feeling very uncomfortable and a lot of pain, and the GP basically said, right, get straight to the ward at Worcester. They're expected to get there. And I went up to Worcester, stayed in Worcester for probably most of the afternoon and the evening, in quite a lot of pain again. I felt like I was just waiting, just in a lot of pain. And then I was taken by ambulance across to Redditch, to the urology department at Redditch, where I was seen by a consultant. And basically what was happening was my urethra, where it was attached to the bladder, was basically closing down. There was scarring there and it was closing down. So they decided to put a catheter back inside me. If I'm honest, it was my worst nightmare. The thought of having a catheter again, didn't want to go through all that again. But they put the catheter in, and to be honest with you, caused immediate relief. I watched it just fill up and fill up. My bladder was that full. Then they gave me a scan, and what the scan showed was that I had urine leaking into my abdomen from where they'd attached my bladder and my urethra. Thankfully, they obviously spotted that, which is really good, because that can be quite dangerous because the chemicals being absorbed into your body and stuff. And they put me on some really, really foul tasting medication. I'm not the best at taking anything orally, medicine, all the rest of it, but I had to drink this horrible drink. I was in there for a couple of days. They monitored me, they scanned me, and having a catheter in me stopped the urine leaking into my abdomen. And slowly my body absorbed it, and I was released to come home. Again, COVID, stuck in a hospital on my own. Thankfully I have FaceTime, phone calls, so I could speak to my daughters, my family. I'm quite a fussy eater as well. My wife will moan like mad about that. I don't like lots of different foods, and the hospital food wasn't great. It's not the best, and you get little small portions, and I'm there and I'm thinking, well, I was losing weight. I think the weight was dropping off me, which wasn't a bad thing. And I remember one day, nurse comes in and says to me, you've got a delivery. One of my girls, one of my daughters, had gone to Deliveroo and got a package delivered to me. Biscuits, crisps, all the things I shouldn't eat. But I'll tell you what, I was so pleased to have these treats that I couldn't have in a hospital, and I wasn't sure to have to hide them. Will the nurses be all right about it? And they were fine about it, and they were okay. Anyway, I made a recovery and I got released. This is where I then started to realise that the world of NHS and private don't really talk to each other. But what I would say is, and I'm very, very grateful to the NHS, when I had my issues, straight away they stepped up and they looked after me. Okay, I've been through the private process. There was none of this, go back to your private doctor. They just got on and dealt with me and looked after me, I have to say, really well. I came out and their view was, we'll leave the catheter in for 2 weeks. I then contact Mr. Doherty and tell him what's happened. And he's like, oh, we'll take it out in a week. Oh, and I'm there, and what do? Do I stick with the NHS? Do I go back to Mr. Doherty? What do I do? And in the end, I decided to go back to Mr. Doherty because he's the person that did the operation. He knows what it was like, what he went through and all the rest of it. And again, you look back, was that the right decision or not? I'm not quite sure, to be honest. But again, his view was, let's take the catheter out after 7 days. I went with what he said, we took it out, and everything was fine. About 3 or 4 days. Then the same started to happen again. I was going through the same issues again, couldn't go to the toilet, struggled to have a wee. And I remember being in the bedroom and Louise coming in, and I know I snapped at her. And you know, I was in a lot of pain, didn't know what to do with myself. And then my lad and my wife took me to Redditch A&E. We went there, I was admitted quite quickly, to be fair. And the nurse said, we need to get the catheter back inside you. Okay, I lay there, she tried, couldn't get it in. Not a nice experience. Just could not get it in because obviously my scarring had closed up, they couldn't get it back in. So then contacted the consultant, the on-call consultant from urology who came in. He'll have a go. Got a camera as well to use on it. Oh, I've never been in so much pain, to be quite honest with you. He's there trying to put the catheter back inside me. At one point I know I screamed in A&E. I don't know what the nurses must have thought. But all them, they keep trying. I was getting sore and sore inside. It was horrible. So in the end they decided to put me under a general the next day. Admitted me to hospital, put me under a general and refitted the catheter. I'm there again with a catheter now. Your worst nightmare again, but I have to say I'd much rather have that than the pain I went through. Again, maybe foolishly, I went back to Mr. Doherty a week or two later and I was in a situation where he basically told me my scarring is going to keep closing up. They don't know how long it's going to take. It could be weeks, could be months. But basically he said to me, I'm going to have to self-catheterise every day. The idea of that, I've got to be honest, just filled me full of fear. After what I'd been through in A&E with them putting catheters in and the pain and that I'd been through. But I have to be fair, it was nowhere near as bad as I expected. Once you get used to doing it, it's all right. You get used to it. And I was doing it every day, and things seemed to be going okay. Then gradually reduced it to every 2 days, every 3 days, every 4 days. And probably, I think it was May this year, I actually stopped self-catheterising. So it's gone on for some time. But again, it was the lesser of the two evils, really. I didn't want to have all that pain again and go through all that pain again. I've been very lucky in that I've been back and had a couple of readings. My readings were, I think my first one was 0.06 after 6 months. My second one was 0.18. It come up it raised slightly, still very low. But I was told by the consultant that can be normal as your body functions start to get back to normal. That can sort of be normal. I think for me, one of the big things, and again, I think this group, I think is actually invaluable to people because I was very lucky. I had a number of colleagues in work that contacted me, that spoke to me, that had been through different stages, different experiences. Some were good, some were not so good. But I did find that invaluable to bounce things off and ask people about different things. And I think in some respects, again, you look back, by going from private or from the NHS to private, I think in some respects I lost some of the support the NHS gives you afterwards. I remember Lisa saying to me, when you come back afterwards, we'll talk to you about how things will be afterwards, about using a pump and all these different things, Viagra tablets, all the rest of it. And I didn't feel I could go back to Lisa because I'd gone down the private route. So that's where it was nice to talk about people or talk to people, colleagues who've been through experiences to find out about incontinence. You know, how you have to do your pelvic floor exercises. You can get a little app on your phone, which I'm sure you know, which you can set it at and you keep doing them. When I first had the operation, I had some incontinence, but I was very lucky in that over time it stopped. No one talks about a dry orgasm. What on earth is a dry orgasm? I had no idea what it was. The fact you may not get an erection, you may get an erection, who knows what will happen in time. Taking tablets, using a pump, all these sorts of things you sort of almost trip over and try things and does it work, does it not work? And I feel I lost a bit of that with not going through the NHS. But I was lucky I had friends and colleagues that I could speak to around it. I think for me, you know, I was a superintendent in the police. I was seen as being a strong character, a strong person in the police. But this battle that I had with cancer affected me more mentally than I probably realised it would, if I'm quite honest about it. Initially, when I got diagnosed, I didn't want anybody to know. I told my family and a couple of close friends. I didn't want people feeling sorry for me. I didn't want people giving me their sympathy. I wanted to just get on with it and keep it to myself. And then as I retired, I had a retirement, a leaving do. And as you'd expected, you make a speech and a leaving do. And I decided that during my speech, I was going to tell everybody that I had prostate cancer. Not for sympathy or anything like that, but I wanted to raise awareness because if this person at the start of my journey hadn't kept on to me to get checked, I do not know where I'd be today. because I probably would not have got checked. I never really had any symptoms. Would have probably carried on naively, not thinking or thinking I was fine, and not got checked. So I then thought this is now my turn, my time to talk about things, to tell people about things. So I very openly got quite emotional in my speech, telling everybody what I'd been through. A number of my colleagues got tested, got the PSA test, and that was the whole point of me doing this thing of talking to people about it. And I'm pleased to say, that's wrong, pleased to say, it's not the right word. But from my colleagues getting tested, 2 of my colleagues were diagnosed as having prostate cancer, both at early stages. One very close friend of mine went through focal therapy. Again, it's a bit of a new thing with Mr. Doherty again. And touch wood, he's been fine since. And then I had another colleague, a friend of a friend really, he's up north. Fred's his name. He contacted me out of the blue one day and said, look, this is my situation. I'm going through this. And as Louise will know, we've been in regular contact since. He's had some issues, some complications. He's been through some real difficult times. And the good thing is, what he says to me is, I was able to reassure him and tell him about my experiences and give him hope that all these different issues, complications, things will get better in time. You will get through it. You can get through it. And that's where, again, I think this group and having people that you can talk to is just so invaluable around, yeah, I had that happened to me, but this is what happens, and this is what happens. And I think the whole experience for me, from a mental health perspective, hit me far worse than I expected. I had days, I'll quite openly admit it, in tears, feeling sorry for myself, down in the dumps. Why me? All those questions that you ask. But around that same time, I had a very close friend, who got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And sadly, within probably 4 to 6 weeks, she passed away. And it made me realise just how lucky I am, really, in that I had an early diagnosis. Very fortunate to have that diagnosis. Yes, I don't know whether it's gone. I hope it is. Touch wood, I hope it is all gone. I know there are various treatments people can have if it is still there, if it comes back. One thing I take from my mum's got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She got diagnosed 18 years ago and was told at the time, I was sat with her when she got the diagnosis, that you've got about 8 years to live. And she's now here still 18 years later. A positive mindset, I think, makes a big difference. I don't know why or how it does, but I think it does. And also treatment moves on. She had chemo, she had it twice and it was really bad, really affected her badly. And then there's a different treatment for the 3rd time. So I think with cancer in particular, there's always new treatments on the horizon. You never know what's coming next. So you've got to try and stay positive, which isn't always easy. And I look back and, as I say to you, at times my mental health, I know it did suffer. Here I am, a big roughy-tufty police officer, but there were days where I felt very down, very lonely at times, because you don't want to tell perhaps close ones how you feel about things. And that's where, again, I think groups like this and support that you give is absolutely invaluable. That's my sort of story, really. Before I sort of finish, and I know that you can ask me questions if you want afterwards, I just want to embarrass my wife. Louise and I have been together a long time. I think sometimes you forget the impact that this has on your partner. You're the person that's got it. You're the person people feel sorry for, but they forget the impact it has on the partner, and I think it's just as hard for the partner as it is for you. I know at times I've not been the easiest to get on with, shall I say that, not the easiest to live with. I know I take it out on her sometimes, which is unfair, but she's always been there for me. So just thank you to Louise.
Well done, well done. Has anybody got any questions for Neil? Oh.
Can I ask, you say you had several PSAs, I think you said 3.
Yeah.
Were you surprised, or anyone you spoke to was surprised that your PSAs were relatively low?
Yeah.
But then you suddenly got the bombshell that you got prostate cancer.
Yeah, I had a colleague in work who sadly he passed away from prostate cancer. His reading was over the 100. It was really high. My readings were low. you know, I didn't really think I had it until I got the MRI scan to be told I got an area of interest. So for me, my readings were quite low, but I am grateful that a doctor did decide to refer me, and I'm lucky it got caught at the early stages. But yes, my readings were low compared to many people I speak to, but I had it, and it did surprise me.
And that's the importance of the MRI now. They're using it up front now rather than...
Yes, I had an
yeah,
MRI several
yeah.
times.
So they are actually doing it before the biopsy, so they can target the right area of the prostate gland itself.
I think it's great what the group is doing around PSA tests, because I've got a number of colleagues who went to their GP, their doctor, to be told we don't do PSA tests. They're not of any value. And I know there's very mixed views on it, but it for me, it's a start. It can be an indication. Doesn't mean you haven't got it, doesn't mean you have got it. But sometimes it can pick things up. So I don't know why some doctors are very much
It's a
against
difficult
it.
one, that is. Where's Derek? Where's Derek? You sent a... Derek Scully? Oh, there you are, riding. You sent that email today about your surgery in Malvern, doing PSA testing in a clinic?
Next month.
Yeah. So one surgery in Worcestershire is doing it.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And it's taken time for us to get this message out there. Gordon works very closely with the GPs down in Pershore there, but we still have GPs around this area who are quite
Yes.
against it, unfortunately.
And I find that difficult to understand.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I had a similar experience with PSA. I was told by a consultant that I had a TERPS operation, and it was told by the consultant that I needed to be checked every 12 months with the PSA. I went to my doctors and said, 12 months on, I'd like to check. Don't do it. Hang on. The consultant said, you've got it in writing. Don't do it. I said, well, why? I'm telling you to do it. You've really got to be forceful with some of these people.
You have
Yeah.
got to.
Because at the end of the
yeah.
day, whether it's accurate or not, and I accept that it's probably not as accurate as we would like it to be, people give false readings, etc. However, there's nothing else there.
No.
No, they are working on it
Nothing
though.
else.
There's fantastic work going ahead with better MRIs that they can actually do in 5 minutes eventually. The figures really that they're getting through now is amazing, and they reckon the future is no biopsies. The MRI will be strong enough to just give the diagnosis, but that's the future, and it's still being worked on, but it's happening. We are getting there, but I'm sorry to hear about that. When a consultant tells you to get it done, you should get it done.
12 months.
Yeah,
It's just routine now. However,
yeah.
the full months.
Yes, sir.
My surgery in Worcester, I've always been able to get PSA blood tests.
Good.
When you reach a certain point, you become what they class as a survivor. But at that point, they push the PSA tests out to 12 months, and then only just a phone call. But I don't think that's good enough.
Well-
I still maintain my PSA blood tests at 3 months, because you've got a much more accurate check of what's happening. Things can change a lot in 12 months, and I prefer to be on the safe side.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I've had a couple of biopsies, I think, in 2018 and in lockdown in February 2021. And I think after 2021, it took a while for the results of that biopsy to come through. And then the follow-through dipped off a bit. But then I had one in the follow-through, I think in the autumn of 2021, and then last November, December. And on the December call, I was told in no uncertain terms, I've got to get it done every 6 months. So I booked the PSA test for December, which I didn't hear anything. I checked with the GP surgery, would I hear anything? They said, well, if you don't hear anything, that'll be fine. And then I've got one, I did one in June, and I had a letter come through when I came back from my birthday, saying I'm going to get a call in mid-August. So, which I didn't get before. So I think it's probably hit and miss as to, depending on where you are. I live in Kidderminster, it's a Kidderminster surgery. So I don't know how it necessarily works, whether it works consistently across the
So,
community or not.
well, we know the PSA isn't perfect,
No.
but it is all we've got to work
Yeah.
with at the moment, and that's what we have to do. It is 90% right, though. You know, there are mistakes, you know, sometimes.
Well,
but
I've also had to do, through work, I've managed, they've rolled out Health Street programme, so I did it the week after my birthday, and the report indicated that my elevation, they can tell, apparently, I didn't realise, they can tell by your bloods, but the elevation had raised a bit and the number was higher, and because I read back to the previous notes, and the number was a bit higher than it was before, so I've got an open mind as to what will happen in mid-August, but I'll just have to take it as it comes. There's not a lot we can do until we have that call, really,
no, let us know.
Yeah.
Yes, I had my prostate removed just over 5 years ago now, and since then I was having a PSA check every 6 months through the kiddie hospital survival through guild, but I had no problem I belong medical centre in Kidderminster as my surgery, no problem going in. I book it myself because I'm told get a PSA in July, which I've just had done. Rang up for it was last Thursday, rang up for the results this morning. Sarah rang me back, giving me the good news that it was negative, still negative. But now I will go, because it's over 5 years, on a 12-month PSA, unless obviously I get any problems in the meantime. But I've had no problem then. She'll send me a letter through saying PSA July 24. I should just go to my surgery 2-3 weeks before and book the appointment, and I've fortunately had no problems.
I did actually set up the survivorship programme in Kidderminster for the whole of the county. And I retired and went back and ran it for another 7 years. And I'm sorry that the other gentleman wants his PSA every 3 months, but generally speaking, once a year is what we do. We go out to 12 monthly readings. And if there's any problems, we know straight away as soon as there's any need for it. But the survivorship programme is very valuable to this county, because it's a much easier way of monitoring men through properly medically, you know, people with proper medical knowledge to deal with your problems, and they can put you back into the system just like that. You know, we just contact the consultant who saw you originally, say, could you see this gentleman again? PSA's just slightly gone up, or something else has happened, and they take you back into the system. So it works extremely well. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'd just like to say to your speaker how very brave you are to come here and to talk about some of the things that aren't necessarily known about the effects are after the operation, if you have an operation, the side effects and the things that affect you as a couple. And it's not generally known about, and from the profession that you were in and the position you had in that must have been very hard to open yourself up to your colleagues, and well done to you.
Good.
Can I follow that with, obviously I think everybody shares that view. Neil, you've done us proud, thank you very much. Really heartening story. And I'm delighted to hear you mention, obviously, the role that Louise played, as this lady just said. So can I ask the two of you, really, what you think? You've seen there are a number of ladies here tonight. We have had on occasion in the past groups on the ladies' side that Mary's helped to set up and have been involved in building. But clearly we are wondering, you know, should we make more effort at the moment to do something about having either separate ladies' evenings, or should we actually have mixed do's that actually focus rather more on how you cope with it from a couple's point of view? So I'd welcome your views anyway.
I think from my perspective, it does have a massive impact on your relationship. In fairness to Louise, she's always said whatever the outcome is, whatever happens, we'll be together. Doesn't matter if we can't have sex, doesn't matter if we can't do things, we still love each other. You know, they're easy things to say, I suppose, but you've got to mean them. I know she meant it, and that meant a lot to me. The whole thing around your relationship, it does have an impact. As you go through the whole process, it puts a strain on you. And then afterwards, things are different. You can't accept that they're not different, they are different. I found that very frustrating. I found it very frustrating that there's certain things that are now different, you know, and I'll talk quite openly about it. A dry orgasm, it's not the same. It's not the same. I find it frustrating that's been taken away from me. Unfortunately, I'm in a position where I can get an erection at times. Doesn't always work as I want it to work. Sometimes I think that's psychological. Sometimes it might be physical. But I think from Louise's perspective, you know, you didn't really have anywhere to go to for support. And I think the idea of having maybe a group for the partners to come along to, I think would be really useful, because it means you can talk, though they can talk quite openly about their issues, their feelings, whereas perhaps in front of me, Louise may not want to say that she's feeling pissed off or upset because she can't do, or I can't do certain things. You know, she puts on this amazing front for me, and I think over time it does make you feel stronger and closer together. And I can't thank her enough for how she supported me. I haven't always told her that, but she has been amazing. And I know all the partners here, I know you've all got a role to play, and I know it's not easy. And I think the idea of having a group for partners, maybe every so often you can come and talk openly to each other, I think would be very valuable.
I've got a lady who'd like to lead that. She's not here tonight, Andrea, but yes, I'm sure she'd like to get involved with that. Lisa Hammond is a lady, you should say.
That's it, Lisa.
She's the expert.
Yes.
She is the expert.
Yes.
I worked with Lisa for many years, and she is brilliant at her job.